The rain came down hard that Tuesday afternoon, turning the city streets into rivers of gray water. Rebecca sat on a metal bench inside the bus station, staring at nothing in particular. Her umbrella dripped beside her, forming a small puddle on the worn floor. She'd been in the city for 3 hours now, finishing up paperwork at her old office. The kind of paperwork that comes with endings, divorce papers, employment termination forms, the kind of stuff that makes you feel like your whole life is being packed into manila folders. She was 42 and felt ancient. Just 6 months ago, she'd been a social worker with purpose, helping families navigate their toughest moments. She'd been married for 12 years to a man who once made her laugh. Now both of those things were gone. The job had burned her out until she couldn't remember why she'd started doing it in the first place. The marriage had faded so slowly she hadn't noticed until it was already over. Rebecca checked her phone. Her bus wouldn't arrive for another 20 minutes. She thought about getting coffee but couldn't muster the energy to stand up. That's how most of her days went lately. Simple tasks felt like climbing mountains. She'd wake up, sit on her couch, watch the hours pass, and wonder when she'd started feeling so hollow inside. That's when she noticed him. A little boy, maybe 7 years old, sat 3 benches away. He was soaked through, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his small jacket doing nothing to keep him warm. But what caught Rebecca's attention wasn't how wet he was. It was how still he sat. Children don't usually sit that still. They fidget, they swing their legs, they look around. This boy just stared at the floor, his small hands gripping a worn backpack like it was the only solid thing in the world. Rebecca watched him for a minute, then 2. No adult came to sit beside him. No one called his name. The boy's shoulders started shaking and she realized he was crying. Silent tears running down his face mixing with the rainwater. She should look away. She should mind her own business. She'd spent years taking care of other people's problems, and where had it gotten her? Burned out? Divorced and sitting alone in a bus station on a rainy Tuesday. But her feet moved anyway. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down on the bench beside him. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up at her with eyes so full of fear and sadness that Rebecca felt something crack inside her chest. Something that had been frozen for months. "I lost my mama," he said in a small voice, his accent thick. "I can't find her." Rebecca's professional instincts kicked in before she could stop them. "How long have you been looking for her?" "Long time." He held up 3 fingers, then added another. "Many hours. What's your name?" "Diego. I'm Rebecca." "Where did you last see your mama, Diego?" The boy's face crumpled. "She go to work this morning. She leave me with Miss Rosa, but Miss Rosa never come home. I wait and wait, but nobody come. So I try to find Mama's work, but I get lost. And then it start raining, and now—" His voice broke. "I don't know where she is." Rebecca's mind raced. This child had been wandering the city alone for hours. He was cold, scared, and lost. She should call the police, let them handle it. That was protocol. That was the smart thing to do. "Do you know where your mama works?" she asked instead. Diego nodded eagerly. "She cleaned the buildings. Big buildings." He gestured upward with his hands. "Tall ones. With the blue windows." She said blue like the sky. Rebecca looked at him carefully. "Does your mama have a phone?" "She have phone, but I don't know the number." "I'm only 7. Mama say I learn it when I'm 8. Do you know her last name? Where she works? The name of the company?" Diego shook his head miserably. "I just know she clean buildings. She leave when it's still dark outside, come home when I'm sleeping. She work very hard." The pieces started coming together in Rebecca's mind. This boy's mother was probably working multiple cleaning jobs, likely off the books. If Diego had been left with a neighbor who didn't show up, and his mother didn't know he was missing yet, she might still be at work somewhere, completely unaware. And if Rebecca called the authorities without more information, Diego could end up in the system. His mother could face charges for leaving him alone, regardless of her circumstances. They could be separated. Rebecca knew how these situations often ended. She'd seen it too many times in her years as a social worker. "Diego, does your mama have papers?" "You know what I mean?" The boy's eyes went wide with panic. His mother had clearly taught him to be careful about this question. He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. His silence told Rebecca everything. "It's okay," she said gently. "I'm not going to call the police, but I want to help you find your mama. Would that be okay?" Diego studied her face for a long moment, the way children do when they're trying to figure out if an adult can be trusted. Finally, he nodded. Rebecca pulled out her phone and looked at the time. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. Her bus would be leaving in 15 minutes. She could get on it, go back to her empty apartment and let someone else handle this. She could be home by 6, microwaving leftovers and watching TV shows she didn't care about. Or she could help this terrified little boy find his mother. The old Rebecca, the one from 6 months ago, would have already sprung into action without a second thought, but that Rebecca had cared too much, worked too hard, and eventually broke under the weight of trying to save everyone. This new Rebecca knew better. She knew that caring too much only led to disappointment and pain. But when she looked at Diego's face, at the hope starting to flicker in his eyes, she couldn't walk away. "Okay," she said, more to herself than to him. "Let's find your mama." Diego's face lit up for the first time since she'd sat down. "Really? You help me?" "Really? But we need to be smart about this. Tell me everything you remember about the building where your mama works. Any detail, no matter how small." As Diego started talking, describing what he could remember in his broken English mixed with Spanish, Rebecca felt something she hadn't felt in months. It wasn't quite hope. It wasn't quite purpose. But it was something. A tiny flicker of feeling in a heart she'd thought had gone completely numb. She stood up, holding out her hand to Diego. He took it without hesitation, his small fingers cold and damp in hers. "Come on," she said. "First, we need to get you warm and dry. Then we're going to find your mama." As they walked out of the bus station together into the rain, Rebecca's phone buzzed with a notification. Her bus was boarding. She silenced it without looking back. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just made the decision that would change everything. Not just for Diego, but for herself, too. Sometimes the path back to yourself starts with helping someone else find their way home. The small cafe on 3rd Street was warm and smelled like coffee and fresh bread. Rebecca ordered hot chocolate for Diego and tea for herself, though she couldn't really afford either. Her bank account had been running on fumes since the divorce, but watching Diego wrap his small hands around the warm cup made the $6 feel worth it. They sat in a corner booth by the window. Diego had stopped shivering, though his clothes were still damp. Rebecca had given him her jacket to wrap around his shoulders. It swallowed him whole, but at least it was dry. "Okay, Diego," she said, pulling out a napkin and a pen. "Let's figure this out together. You said your mama works in a building with blue windows. Can you remember anything else about it?" Diego thought hard, his forehead wrinkling in concentration. "It's very tall. Taller than all the other buildings around it." Rebecca wrote that down, though she knew it wasn't much to go on. The city had dozens of tall buildings. "What about the neighborhood? What did you see when you tried to find it?" Diego picked up a sugar packet and turned it over in his hands. There was lots of cars, and people in nice clothes, men with ties. He pronounced it Tice, and Rebecca found herself smiling despite everything. "Business district," she wrote. That narrowed it down a little. "Did you see any stores? Restaurants? Anything with a name you remember?" Diego shook his head sadly. Everything looked the same. Big buildings, more big buildings. He sipped his hot chocolate, leaving a small mustache on his upper lip. "Mama said she worked near the horse that spits water." Rebecca sat up straighter. "A horse fountain? Diego, that's good. That's really good." She knew exactly what he meant. There was a famous sculpture in the financial district, a bronze horse with water spraying from its mouth. Only about 10 major office buildings surrounded that plaza. "My mama, she work at night mostly," Diego continued. "She say the day people go home, then she come and make everything clean again. She clean the desks, the floors, the bathrooms, everything." "Does she work alone or with other people?" "With other people. She have friends. Miss Carmen, Miss Rosa, and others, but I don't know their last names either." He looked down at his hot chocolate. "I'm sorry I don't know more things." "Hey," Rebecca said gently, reaching across to touch his hand. "You're doing great. You're 7 years old and you're being so brave right now. Your mama would be proud of you." At the mention of his mother, Diego's eyes filled with tears again. "You think she's looking for me?" "I know she is," Rebecca said with certainty. "I promise you, wherever your mama is right now, she's scared and she's looking everywhere for you." "I was supposed to stay with Miss Rosa," Diego whispered. "Mama's going to be so mad at me." "This isn't your fault. You were left alone when you shouldn't have been. Your mama won't be mad. She'll just be happy you're safe." As Diego drank his hot chocolate, Rebecca's mind worked through the possibilities. If his mother worked for a cleaning company that serviced the financial district, there were maybe 3 or 4 major contractors that handled most of those buildings. But calling them would be tricky. They'd want a last name, employee ID, something concrete. And if Diego's mother was undocumented, she might be working under a different name anyway. Diego, does your mama ever talk about her boss? The person who tells her which buildings to clean? He nodded. Mr. Chen, she say he nice but very strict. If you late, you lose the job. Rebecca's phone buzzed. A text from her ex-husband about furniture they needed to divide. She ignored it. That life felt very far away right now. What time does your mama usually get home from work? Late, sometimes I already sleeping. But she always come to my bed and kiss my head. Always. Rebecca checked the time. It was nearly 5 o'clock. If Diego's mother worked evening shifts cleaning office buildings, she probably started around 5 or 6 and worked until midnight or later. Which meant she was either at work now, completely unaware Diego was missing, or she'd discovered he was gone and was frantically searching. Diego, where do you live? What neighborhood? Brighton Street, near the laundromat with the yellow sign. Rebecca knew that area. It was about 4 miles from here, in a part of town where rent was cheap and questions weren't asked. If Diego's mother had left him with a neighbor that morning and was now at work, she might not find out he was missing until her break, or until she got home tonight. Hours from now. Do you have any other family here? Grandparents? An uncle, anyone? Diego shook his head. Just me and Mama. My abuela is back in Mexico. Mama sent her money every month. She showed me pictures, but I never meet her. The full picture was becoming clearer. A single mother, working multiple jobs, probably sending half her money back home, raising a son in a country where one wrong move could mean deportation. Rebecca had seen this story before. She'd worked with families like this. The weight of their daily fear, the impossible choices they had to make. Your mama sounds like a very strong person, Rebecca said. She is. Diego's face lit up when he talked about her. She worked so hard. She say one day I'm going to go to college, be a doctor or a teacher. She say I'm going to have a better life than her. Something twisted in Rebecca's chest. 6 months ago, she would have known exactly what to do in this situation. She would have had resources, contacts, systems to navigate. But now she was just a burned-out former social worker with no job and a dwindling bank account, sitting in a cafe with a lost child and a napkin full of barely useful notes. What was she even doing? She should call child services. Let the professionals handle it. That was the responsible thing to do. But when she looked at Diego at the trust in his eyes, she couldn't do it. She'd seen what happened to kids who got caught up in the system. Even when everyone had the best intentions, things went wrong. Families got separated. Children ended up in foster care. Mothers got deported. Okay, she said, making a decision. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to find the building with the blue windows near the horse fountain. We're going to check every single one if we have to. And we're going to find your mama. Diego's whole face transformed. Really, you promise? Rebecca hesitated. She'd learned the hard way not to make promises she couldn't keep. It was one of the reasons she'd left social work. Too many broken promises. Too many times she'd failed despite trying her hardest. But Diego was looking at her with such hope, such complete faith that she heard herself say, I promise. They finished their drinks and headed back out into the rain. It had lightened to a drizzle now, but the sky was still gray and heavy. Rebecca pulled up a map on her phone, finding the horse fountain sculpture. The plaza was about 15 blocks away. As they walked, Diego slipped his small hand into hers. It felt strange. Rebecca didn't have children. She and her ex-husband had talked about it once years ago, but the conversation never went anywhere. Now she was glad. Bringing a child into her messy, uncertain life would have been a disaster. But holding Diego's hand as they walked through the wet streets, she felt something shift inside her. For months, she'd been so focused on her own pain, her own failures, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed by someone else. To have someone depend on her. Rebecca? Diego said quietly. Yeah? Thank you for helping me. You're a good person. She didn't feel like a good person. She felt like a fraud who'd abandoned her career because it got too hard. She felt like a failure who couldn't even keep her marriage together. She felt lost. But to this scared little boy, she was someone who stopped when everyone else walked past. Someone who bought him hot chocolate and promised to find his mother. Sometimes she thought maybe that's enough. Come on, she said, squeezing his hand. Let's find your mama. As they turned the corner toward the financial district, Rebecca had no idea if she could keep her promise. She had no plan, no resources, and no real authority to be doing any of this. But for the first time in 6 months, she felt something other than numbness. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she could still help someone after all. The bronze horse stood in the center of the plaza, water streaming from its mouth into a circular pool below. Despite the rain, the financial district bustled with people in business suits hurrying home for the day. Nobody gave Rebecca and Diego a second glance as they stood there, looking up at the surrounding buildings. "Which one has blue windows, Diego?" Rebecca asked. Diego turned in a slow circle, studying each tower. I don't know." They all looked different now. Rebecca's heart sank. Of course they did. In the rain, with the fading daylight, everything looked gray. She counted 6 major office buildings around the plaza, each one at least 30 stories tall. Any one of them could have blue-tinted windows that a 7-year-old might remember. "Okay, no problem," she said, trying to sound confident. "We'll just check them all." They started with the closest building. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a security desk right by the entrance. A guard in a crisp uniform looked up as they approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone making it clear they didn't look like they belonged there. "Hi, I'm looking for someone who works here," Rebecca said. "A woman who cleans in the evening. Her name is Elena." "Elena what?" "I don't know her last name." The guard's expression hardened. "I can't give out information about our cleaning staff without a last name. Company policy. Please, this is her son. He got separated from her and he's been looking for her for hours." The guard glanced at Diego, then back at Rebecca. "Look, I sympathize, but I can't help you. If the kid is lost, you need to call the police. Can you at least tell me if your building has a cleaning crew that works evenings? If they're with a company called Chen's Services?" "I can't give out that information either. You need to leave or I'll have to call security." Rebecca felt Diego's hand tighten in hers. They backed away from the desk and left the building. "It's okay," she told Diego, though frustration was building in her chest. "We'll try the next one." The second building went the same way. So did the third. The security guards were polite but firm. No last name, no information. One of them suggested she try calling the police. Another told her that cleaning crews came in at different times and he wasn't allowed to discuss their schedules. By the fourth building, it was getting dark. Diego was limping slightly, his shoes soaked through, his small face pinched with exhaustion and fear. Rebecca felt her own energy draining. What was she doing? This was hopeless. She should have called child services hours ago. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her ex-husband asking why she wasn't responding. A missed call from her mother. A reminder that her rent was due in 3 days and she had no idea how she'd pay it. "Rebecca, I'm tired," Diego said softly. "I know, sweetie. Just a couple more, okay?" They tried the fifth building. This time, a different kind of security guard met them at the desk. Older, with kind eyes and gray hair at his temples. "Evening, folks. What can I do for you?" Rebecca explained the situation again, her voice tired. She was ready for another rejection, but the guard leaned forward, studying Diego's face. "You know, I might be able to help. We do have an evening cleaning crew. They come in around 6. What did you say the mother's name was?" "Elena," Diego said hopefully. "My mama's name is Elena." "And she works for Mr. Chen?" Diego nodded eagerly. The guard pulled out a phone and made a call, turning slightly away. Rebecca could hear him speaking in low tones but couldn't make out the words. After a minute, he hung up and turned back to them. "I called our facility manager. We don't have anyone named Elena on our current evening crew, but he said there are 3 other buildings in this area that use the same cleaning company. Here." He wrote down 3 addresses on a piece of paper. "Try these and—" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a $10 bill. "Get the kid something to eat. He looks hungry." Rebecca's throat tightened. "Thank you. Really, thank you so much. Just find his mama," the guard said, ruffling Diego's wet hair. "Good luck, little guy." Back on the street, Rebecca looked at the 3 addresses. They were spread out, each one several blocks apart. It would take at least another hour to check them all, and there was no guarantee Elena worked at any of them. Diego tugged on her sleeve. "I'm really hungry, Rebecca." She looked down at him, this brave little boy who hadn't complained once during hours of searching. She thought about the $10 in her pocket, about her nearly empty bank account, about all the reasons she should have given up by now. "Come on," she said. Let's get you some food. They found a small diner 2 blocks away. Rebecca ordered Diego a grilled cheese sandwich and French fries, and got herself just a coffee. As Diego ate, she studied the addresses again, trying to figure out the most efficient route. That's when her phone rang. Her ex-husband. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Where are you?" he demanded. "You were supposed to sign those papers and get them back to me today." Something came up. What could possibly be more important than finalizing our divorce? Rebecca looked at Diego, carefully eating his sandwich, his eyes still holding that mixture of fear and hope. "I'm helping someone." "Of course you are," his voice was bitter. "You know what your problem always was, Rebecca? You care more about strangers than the people actually in your life. You gave everything to your job, to random people you didn't even know, and you had nothing left for me." For us, the words stung because they were partially true. She had thrown herself into her work, trying to save every family, fix every problem, and when she couldn't, when she failed, it had destroyed her. "I have to go," she said quietly. "You're doing it again, aren't you? Trying to save someone you can't save. When are you going to learn, Rebecca?" "You can't fix everything." She hung up without answering. Diego was watching her with concerned eyes. "Are you okay?" The question caught her off guard. Here was this child lost and scared and searching for his mother, asking if she was okay. "Yeah," she said, and realized she meant it. "Yeah, I'm okay." As Diego finished eating, Rebecca thought about what her ex-husband had said. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was doing this again, throwing herself into someone else's crisis. But it didn't feel the same as before. Before, she'd been trying to prove something, to convince herself she was valuable, necessary. Now she was just trying to help one scared kid find his mom. "Diego, can I ask you something?" "Okay. Why did you trust me? At the bus station, you didn't know me at all. Why did you let me help you?" Diego thought about this seriously, the way children do when asked a real question. "You looked sad," he said finally. "Like you understand about being lost." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "Out of the mouths of babes," her grandmother used to say. "Yeah," she said softly. "I guess I do understand that." They left the diner and headed toward the first address on the list. It was fully dark now, the streetlights casting pools of yellow on the wet pavement. Diego's steps were getting slower, and Rebecca knew he was exhausted. She was exhausted too, her feet aching, her clothes still damp from the rain. The first building was a disappointment. The cleaning crew there was all men, working for a different company. The second building's crew hadn't arrived yet, and the security guard told them to come back in an hour. By the time they reached the third building, Rebecca was close to giving up. It was nearly 8 o'clock. They'd been searching for over 4 hours. Diego had started crying quietly, trying to hide it from her but not quite succeeding. "One more," she told him. "Let's try one more and then we'll figure something else out." The building was older than the others, not as shiny or new. The lobby was small and there was no security desk, just a directory on the wall. Rebecca scanned it, looking for anything that might help. That's when she heard voices. Female voices speaking Spanish coming from a hallway to the left. She looked at Diego. "Do you hear that?" Diego's head jerked up, his eyes suddenly bright. He pulled away from Rebecca and ran toward the voices before she could stop him. "Diego, wait!" She chased after him down the hallway, into a room where 4 women in cleaning uniforms were organizing supplies. They looked up in surprise as Diego burst in. "Do you know Elena?" he shouted in Spanish. "Elena who has a little boy? My mama, do you know my mama?" The women looked at each other, then back at Diego. One of them, a short woman with gray streaks in her dark hair, stepped forward. "Elena Rodriguez?" she asked. "Is that your mama?" Diego nodded frantically. The woman pulled out a phone. "Elena is my friend. She work in the building on 7th Street tonight. She is very scared. She looking everywhere for you." Rebecca felt her knees go weak with relief. The woman made a call, speaking rapid Spanish. Rebecca heard the name Diego several times. Then the woman handed the phone to Diego. "Mama?" Diego's voice broke. "Mama, I'm here. I'm okay." On the other end of the phone, Rebecca could hear a woman crying and talking fast in Spanish. Diego was crying too, answering in between sobs. After a minute, the woman gently took the phone back from Diego and spoke again, then handed it to Rebecca. "Elena want to talk to you," she said. Rebecca took the phone. "Hello? You have my son?" The woman's voice was shaking. "You have Diego? He is safe?
Yes, he's safe.
He's right here with me. Thank God. Thank God. The woman was crying. Who are you? How did you find him? My name is Rebecca. I found him at the bus station. We've been looking for you. Please, please don't leave. I come right now. Please stay with him. We'll wait right here, Rebecca promised. We're not going anywhere. She handed the phone back to the woman who gave them the address where Elena was working. It was only 6 blocks away. Diego looked up at Rebecca with shining eyes. We found her. We found my mama. Rebecca nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They'd actually done it. Against all odds, with nothing but a vague description and stubborn determination, they'd found her. They sat in the lobby to wait. Diego leaned against Rebecca, his eyes drooping despite his excitement. She put her arm around him, feeling his small body relax against hers. For the first time in months, Rebecca felt something unfamiliar. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. Pride. Purpose. The feeling that she'd done something that mattered. Maybe her ex-husband was right. Maybe she couldn't fix everything. But today she'd helped one scared little boy find his way home. And maybe, just maybe, she'd started finding her own way too. They didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, the lobby door burst open and a woman rushed in. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, wearing a cleaning uniform with her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes wild with fear and hope. Diego, she cried. Mama! Diego jumped up and ran to her. Rebecca watched as mother and son collided in the middle of the lobby, Elena dropping to her knees and pulling Diego into her arms. She held him so tight it looked like she was trying to absorb him back into herself. Both of them were sobbing, words tumbling out in Spanish too fast for Rebecca to follow. Elena was checking Diego all over, touching his face, his arms, his hair, as if making sure he was real. Diego was talking rapidly, pointing at Rebecca, but his mother couldn't seem to stop crying long enough to listen. She just held him, rocking back and forth, repeating what Rebecca assumed were prayers of thanks. Rebecca stood back, giving them space. Her own eyes were wet. She'd seen reunions before in her years as a social worker, but they never got old. There was something about watching a mother and child find each other again that reminded you what really mattered in life. After several minutes, Elena finally looked up at Rebecca. She carefully stood, keeping one hand firmly on Diego's shoulder as if afraid he might disappear again. You found him, she said in heavily accented English. You brought back my son. He's a brave kid, Rebecca said. He never gave up. Elena crossed the lobby and before Rebecca could react, pulled her into a tight hug. She was crying again, saying things in Spanish that Rebecca didn't understand but felt in her bones. Thank you. Bless you, Angel. It's okay, Rebecca said awkwardly, patting Elena's back. I'm just glad he's safe. When Elena finally stepped back, she kept one hand on Rebecca's arm, as if needing to touch her to believe she was real. How did you find him? Where was he? At the bus station downtown. He'd been trying to find your work, but he got lost in the rain. Elena's face crumpled. She looked at Diego. Miss Rosa, she was supposed to watch you. I left you with her this morning before work. Miss Rosa never came home, Diego said quietly. I waited, but she didn't come. So I tried to find you, but I got lost. I'm sorry, Mama. No, mi amor. This is not your fault. Elena pulled him close again. Miss Rosa, she texted me finally 1 hour ago. Her daughter got sick, she had to go to hospital. She forgot to tell me. When I saw her message, I ran home right away, but you were gone. I thought... She couldn't finish the sentence. Rebecca could imagine what Elena had thought. Every parent's worst nightmare. She'd probably imagined every terrible thing that could happen to a child alone in the city. I called everyone, Elena continued, wiping her eyes. All my friends, everyone in our building. Nobody see you. I was going to police, but I was so scared. If they ask for papers, they might take Diego away. They might send me back to Mexico. I didn't know what to do. The weight of that impossible choice hung in the air. Call for help and risk losing your child anyway. Or don't call and risk never finding him. Rebecca had seen parents face this choice before. It never got easier to witness. A lady who knows you told me where to find you, Diego said. And Rebecca helped me search all day. We went to so many buildings. Elena looked at Rebecca with eyes full of questions. Why you do this? You don't even know us. It was a good question. One Rebecca had been asking herself all evening. Why had she gotten involved? Why had she spent hours searching instead of just calling the authorities and washing her hands of it? I couldn't just walk away, she said simply. He needed help. But all this time you stay with him? You help him? You don't have to do this, Rebecca shrugged. Sometimes we do things we don't have to do because they're the right thing to do. Elena studied her face for a long moment. Then she said something that caught Rebecca completely off guard. You look sad. Like you carry something heavy, Rebecca blinked. First Diego had noticed, now his mother. Were her problems really that obvious to strangers? I'm fine, she said automatically. No, Elena said gently. You are not fine. I see it in your eyes. Same sadness I see in my mirror every day. There was something about the simple honesty of it that made Rebecca's carefully constructed walls crack. I lost my job, she heard herself say. And my marriage ended. I've been kind of lost myself lately. Elena nodded as if this made perfect sense. And today you help a lost boy find his way home. Maybe this is not accident. Before Rebecca could process what that meant, Elena pulled out her phone. I need to call my boss. Tell him I can't finish my shift tonight. I need to take Diego home, make sure he is really okay. Wait, Rebecca said. Will you get in trouble? Will you lose your job? Elena's face tightened.
Maybe. Mr. Chen, he is good boss, but very strict about finishing the work.
But I don't care. Diego is more important than any job. Rebecca understood that calculus. This woman worked 3 jobs, sent money back to Mexico, lived in fear of deportation. Losing even one job could be devastating, but she'd give it all up in a heartbeat for her son. Let me call him, Rebecca said. Let me explain what happened. You don't have to, please. Let me help. Elena hesitated, then gave Rebecca the number. Rebecca stepped to the side of the lobby and made the call. A man answered in clipped English. Chen Cleaning Services. Hello, Mr. Chen. My name is Rebecca Chen. She paused, realizing the coincidence of the shared last name. I'm calling about one of your employees, Elena Rodriguez. She had a family emergency tonight. She left in middle of shift. This is unacceptable. Her son was missing. He'd been lost for hours. She just found him. There was silence on the other end. Then Mr. Chen said, Her son is okay? Yes, he's okay now. Another pause. Elena is good worker. Very reliable. She never missed shift before. I know this isn't ideal, but it was a real emergency. She was terrified. Mr. Chen sighed. Tell her she need to find someone to cover rest of her shift tonight. And tomorrow she work extra to make up the time. But she keep the job. Relief flooded through Rebecca. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Really, thank you. Tell her I'm glad her boy is safe. Children are most important thing. Rebecca relayed the message to Elena, who looked like she might cry again. He give me another chance? He did. But you need to find someone to cover the rest of tonight. Elena immediately started making calls in Spanish. Within 5 minutes, she'd found a friend who could finish her shift. Crisis averted. As Elena worked out the details, Rebecca's phone buzzed again. Her mother this time, probably worried because she hadn't returned any calls. The real world was creeping back in, reminding her that she had her own problems to deal with. Rebecca? Diego tugged on her sleeve. Thank you for finding my mama. She knelt down so they were eye to eye. You're very welcome, Diego. You were so brave today. Are you going to leave now? The question surprised her. Well, your mama is here. You're safe. So yeah, I should probably go. Diego's face fell. Elena, finishing her call, caught the exchange. You have somewhere to go? Someone waiting for you at home? Rebecca thought about her empty apartment, the leftover takeout in the fridge, the divorce papers waiting to be signed. Not really. Then you come with us, Elena said firmly. I make you dinner. Is late, but I cook something good. You spend all day helping my son. Is the least I can do. You don't have to. Please. Elena's voice was soft but insistent. Let me thank you properly. And besides, Diego will be sad if you just disappear. Rebecca looked at them standing together, mother and son both watching her with hopeful eyes. She could make an excuse, go back to her apartment, fall back into the numbness she'd been living in for months. Or she could say yes. Okay, she said. Thank you. I'd like that, Elena beamed. Good, come, we take bus to our home. Is not fancy, but is warm and safe. As they walked to the bus stop together, Diego between them holding both their hands, Rebecca felt something shift inside her. Her ex-husband's words echoed in her mind. You can't fix everything. He was right. She couldn't. She couldn't save every family, solve every problem, make everything okay. Trying to do that had broken her. But she could help one lost boy on one rainy Tuesday. And maybe, in a strange way, he'd helped her too. The bus arrived, mostly empty at this late hour. They sat together in the back, Diego leaning against his mother's shoulder, already half asleep. Elena reached across and squeezed Rebecca's hand. Thank you, she said again. You give me back my heart tonight. Rebecca squeezed back, not trusting herself to speak. Through the bus window, the city lights blurred past, familiar but somehow different than they'd been this morning. This morning she'd been drowning in her own failures, seeing nothing but endings. Tonight, sitting on a bus with a mother and son she'd only just met, she felt like maybe there were still beginnings out there too. You just had to be brave enough to look for them. Elena's apartment was on the 4th floor of a building that had seen better days. The hallway smelled like cooking and old carpet, but it was clean. Elena unlocked 3 different locks before opening the door, and Rebecca understood. This was a woman who knew how fragile safety could be. Inside, the apartment was tiny but immaculate. 1 bedroom, Rebecca guessed, with a small living room and a kitchen barely big enough for 1 person. But it was filled with touches that made it a home. Pictures of Diego at various ages covered one wall. A small altar with candles and a statue of Mary sat in the corner, colorful blankets draped over the worn furniture. I'm sorry it's so small, Elena said, immediately going to the kitchen. Please sit. I make you something to eat. You really don't have to go to any trouble. Is no trouble. I like to cook. Makes me feel normal. Elena was already pulling out pans and ingredients. Diego, go change into dry clothes. Then homework, but Mama, no buts. You missed enough school this week already. Diego obeyed, but not before hugging his mother one more time, like he needed to make sure she was still real. Rebecca watched him disappear into what must be their bedroom, and tried not to think about how they probably shared that small space. He sleeps with you? She asked before she could stop herself. Elena nodded, chopping an onion with practiced efficiency. Is okay. When he was baby, I was scared something happened if I don't watch him every second. Now it's just, we are used to it. And the apartment is expensive even though is small. One day I save enough for bigger place, 2 bedrooms. Diego have his own room like other kids. Rebecca sat at the small table pushed against the wall. How long have you been here? In the city? 2 years and 4 months. Elena's hands never stopped moving as she talked. I come from Oaxaca, very small village. My husband, he died when Diego was 3. Accident on his job, construction. After that, no money. No future for Diego, so I save everything and I come here. That must have been terrifying. Yes, very scary. But staying was more scary. Diego is a smart boy. He deserved chance at good life. Good school. Maybe college one day. Elena paused in her cooking, looking at the pictures on the wall. Here, he can be anything. There, he would work in fields like his father, like his grandfather. I don't want that for him. Rebecca thought about the risks Elena took every single day. Working without proper documents, always looking over her shoulder, knowing that one wrong encounter with police could mean losing everything. Also, her son could have opportunities she never had. You're a good mother, Rebecca said quietly. Elena turned to look at her, surprised. No, I'm not. Good mother don't leave her child with someone who forget about him. Good mother have papers, legal job, safe life. Good mother loves her child and does whatever it takes to give him a better life. That's you? Elena's eyes filled with tears for what must have been the 10th time that evening. Sometimes I think I'm selfish. I bring Diego to country where we always hiding, always scared. Maybe it's better he grow up in Mexico with his grandmother, where he belong. Does he seem like he'd be better off without you? They both looked toward the bedroom, where they could hear Diego humming as he changed clothes. Elena smiled through her tears. No, we belong together. Then you made the right choice. Elena went back to cooking and Rebecca sat in comfortable silence watching her work. There was something meditative about it, the simple act of preparing food for people you cared about. Rebecca couldn't remember the last time she'd cooked a real meal. She'd been living on frozen dinners and takeout for months. Diego emerged in dry clothes, carrying a backpack full of homework. He sat next to Rebecca at the table and pulled out worksheets covered in math problems. You need help? Rebecca asked. Diego nodded shyly. I'm not good at multiplication. Let me see. Rebecca looked at the worksheet. Third grade math. Okay, let's work through it together. For the next 20 minutes, she helped Diego with his homework while Elena cooked. It felt surreal, sitting in this tiny apartment with people she'd met just hours ago, helping with multiplication tables while the smell of onions and spices filled the air. But it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right for a long time. Elena served dinner around 9 o'clock. Rice and beans with chicken. Simple but delicious. They ate together at the small table, elbows bumping, passing dishes back and forth. Diego told his mother the whole story of their search, adding dramatic details that made it sound like an adventure rather than the stressful ordeal it had been. And Rebecca, she promised she'd find you, Diego said with his mouth full. And she keep her promise. Elena looked at Rebecca. You know, this morning I pray. I ask God to watch over Diego while I work. I think maybe God send you. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably. I'm not religious. Don't have to be religious for God to use you. Elena smiled. Or maybe it's just luck. Either way, you were in right place at right time, and you choose to help when you could walk away. Why did you? Diego asked. Help me, I mean. You could just tell someone about me and leave. Rebecca thought about how to answer, how to explain that she'd been so lost in her own darkness, that she'd almost missed the chance to do something good, that Diego's scared face had cracked through the numbness she'd been wrapped in for months. I used to be a social worker, she said finally. I spent years helping families, but I got tired and I thought I was done with all that. When I saw you at the bus station, I tried to tell myself it wasn't my problem, but I couldn't make myself believe it. Why you stopped being social worker? Elena asked. You are good at helping people. Rebecca stared at her plate. I wasn't good enough. There was this family I worked with for almost a year. Single mom with 3 kids. I helped them with housing, food assistance, job training. I thought we were making progress. Then one day she just disappeared. Took the kids and left town, and I never found out what happened to them. I spent weeks wondering if I'd done something wrong, if I'd failed them somehow. And there were other cases like that. Times I couldn't fix things, couldn't save people who needed saving. It broke something in me. So you quit? I went on leave. Told myself I just needed a break. But the break kept getting longer and eventually they let me go. Around the same time, my marriage fell apart. He said I cared more about my work than about him, and maybe he was right. I poured everything into trying to save other people's families and neglected my own. She laughed without humor. Some helper I turned out to be. Elena reached across the table and took Rebecca's hand. You saved my son today. That's not nothing. One good day doesn't make up for all the failures, no, but maybe as a start. Maybe you don't have to be perfect helper. Maybe you just have to be there when someone needs you. Diego had been listening quietly. Now he said, Miss Rebecca, you told me I was brave today, but I think you're brave too. Why do you say that? Because you were sad, but you still helped me anyway. Mama say that's the hardest kind of brave. Doing good things even when you're hurting. Rebecca felt tears slip down her cheeks. When had she started crying? Elena squeezed her hand tighter. Diego got up and hugged her from the side, his small arms barely reaching around her shoulders. They sat like that for a moment, this makeshift family of broken people holding each other up. Rebecca couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged her like this, with such simple, genuine affection. After dinner, Diego fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from his ordeal. Elena carried him to bed and Rebecca stood to leave. Wait, Elena said, coming back into the living room. I have something for you. She went to the altar in the corner and picked up a small medal on a chain. This is St. Christopher. He protect travelers, people on journeys. My mother give to me before I come here. I want you to have it. I can't take that. It was your mother's, which is why I want you to have it. Elena pressed it into Rebecca's hand. You are on journey too, I think. Journey back to yourself. St. Christopher help you find your way. Rebecca looked at the medal, worn smooth from years of handling. Thank you. For everything. The dinner, the company. I needed this more than you know. You need anything else? Place to stay tonight? No, I have my apartment. It's fine. Elena wrote something on a piece of paper. This is my number. You call me anytime. You need friend, you need talk, you need anything. I mean it. Rebecca pocketed the number knowing she probably wouldn't call, but it felt good to have it anyway. As she headed for the door, Elena hugged her one more time. You give me back my son today. I never forget this, never. The bus ride home was quiet. Rebecca sat by the window watching the city pass by, turning the metal over in her hands. When she finally got to her apartment, it looked exactly as she'd left it that morning. Divorce papers on the kitchen table, dirty dishes in the sink, mail piled up by the door. But something felt different. She felt different. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found a number she hadn't called in 6 months. Her old supervisor from social services. Before she could overthink it, she typed out a text. Hi, Patricia. I know it's late. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee sometime this week. I think I might be ready to talk about coming back. She hit send before she could change her mind. Then she went through her apartment, actually cleaning for the first time in weeks. She washed the dishes, sorted the mail, threw out the takeout containers. Small steps, but they felt significant. Before bed, she looked at the divorce papers. They still needed to be signed. Her ex-husband would be angry that she'd delayed. But as she read through them, she realized she didn't feel the crushing weight she'd felt before. The marriage was over, yes. That part of her life was done. But that didn't mean everything was over. She thought about Diego's words. You were sad, but you still helped me anyway. Maybe that was enough. Maybe she didn't have to wait until she was healed to start helping again. Maybe helping others was part of how she'd heal. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Rebecca. So good to hear from you. How about Tuesday at 10? I've missed you, Tuesday. 3 days away. Rebecca typed back a quick confirmation, then set her phone down. She looked at the St. Christopher medal on her nightstand, thinking about the journey Elena had talked about. The journey back to herself. She wasn't there yet. She was still lost in a lot of ways. Still dealing with grief and failure and all the messy parts of being human. But maybe, like Diego in the rain, she was starting to find her way. 1 month later, Rebecca stood outside the same bus station where she'd met Diego, but this time she was there with purpose. She'd signed the divorce papers. She'd met with Patricia and accepted a part-time position, easing back into social work with better boundaries and realistic expectations. And today, she was meeting Elena and Diego for lunch. She saw them before they saw her. Diego running ahead, Elena calling after him to slow down, both of them laughing. When Diego spotted Rebecca, his face lit up. Miss Rebecca. He crashed into her with a hug. Elena followed, moving slower but smiling wide. They went to the same cafe where Rebecca had bought Diego hot chocolate that rainy Tuesday, that felt both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. Over sandwiches, Elena told Rebecca she'd gotten a better job. Still cleaning, but at a hospital with better pay and more stable hours. Diego showed off a test he'd gotten an A on, his pride obvious. What about you? Elena asked. You look different, lighter. Rebecca smiled. I'm going back to work. Part-time for now, but it feels right. See? Diego said. I told you that you were brave. You did tell me that. As they talked and laughed, Rebecca realized something. That rainy Tuesday, she'd thought she was saving a lost boy. But the truth was more complicated than that. Yes, she'd helped Diego find his mother. But in doing so, she'd found something she thought she'd lost forever. Her purpose, her strength, her ability to care about something beyond her own pain. Sometimes the people we help end up helping us more than we help them. Sometimes being brave doesn't mean being fearless. It means showing up even when you're scared, even when you're broken, even when you think you have nothing left to give. And sometimes, finding yourself starts with helping someone else find their way home. Rebecca took a sip of her coffee and looked at Elena and Diego across the table. These two people who'd stumbled into her life at exactly the moment she needed them, and smiled. She was going to be okay. They all were.